Hello, this is Deidre Brill, and welcome to this presentation on the Books of Hours. The purpose of the Books of Hours, and what it actually was a personal book of devotion that was meant to guide prayers. This was similar to the Divine Hours of monastic study, and it contained texts of prayers and songs, as well as illustrations. This was based off of books called breviaries, which were previously used for clergy members. And sometimes Books of Hours were given as gifts or seen as status symbols. The illustrations were very important because they served as page markers. These were books that sometimes had inconsistent parts and did not always have set page numbers, so the illustrations were really seen to help the user navigate the book. And Books of Hours, because they were given as gifts or were solicited by patrons, were highly customized. For example, family coats of arms or mottos were included, as well as initials or monograms from the patrons. The image shown here on the right is actually a portrait of the patron for whom this particular Book of Hours was commissioned. You can see the woman kneeling who's wearing a red dress. That is a portrait of the original owner of this Book of Hours being presented to the Virgin and the Child. And of course, Books of Hours were medieval bestsellers. There were more copies made of these types of books than the Bible in the late Middle Ages. And this is something that started with the noble classes, but did eventually spread to lower middle classes that were starting to develop at the time. And as it was such a popular type of book, thousands of copies survived that we now have in libraries, museums, and universities. And it was popular because of several reasons. Mostly that more people were then able to read in the late Middle Ages than any time before that. There was also an increase in personal spirituality, with religion being seen as something that was more about personal devotions than simply attending church. And also, clergy members were no longer the only ones who made religious manuscripts. There was a rise of book professionals acting as scribes, which allowed for more to be made. One of the phrases that comes up lots with Book of Hours is the phrase liturgical use. And use simply means the region where this book was intended for use, which patron was going to be initially using the book and where they were living. This did not necessarily mean the region where the book was created by the scribe. And codicologists have a difficult time sometimes determining use, but some of the differences that they look at to determine that is which saints' days are listed on the calendar. Saints that belong to a specific region or more associated with a specific region can be a key for that. There are also variations in imagery used in the Hours of the Virgin that depend on use, and also some differing text. And three types of popular use are the use of Paris, use of Rome, and the use of Sarum, meaning England, as modern-day Salisbury was then called. And the parts and examples of the Books of Hours, what makes them up? Well, is truly that the parts varied according to the manuscript. They were not always consistent. However, the Hours of the Virgin section was the key section of any Book of Hours and was included in all of them. Some sections included the calendar. And anytime the calendar was listed, it was always in the beginning, and it included important saints' days and holidays, which were often highlighted in red or gold text, as you can see in the image at the bottom. The sequence of the Gospels was often depicted with the four apostles who wrote the Gospels shown writing. Hours of the Cross was another section of a Book of Hours that might depict the Passion of the Christ. That's different scenes from Christ's life, as shown in the image up at the top right. And another section might include prayers to the Virgin, such as the Obsecto Te and the O Intermorata. The Hours of the Virgin, as I mentioned before, was the key part of any Book of Hours, and these were based on the 8 canonical hours of prayer, which are listed here. And the Hours of the Virgin depicted scenes from the life of the Virgin Mary, as shown in the image on the left, which is the flight from Egypt, And this particular image in this particular manuscript was used for the prayer hour of Vespers, which was done in the evening. And then finally, sections of the Books of Hours, there were several that focused on repentance and death, such as the penitential Psalms, which focused on sorrow for sins, and also the Litany, which usually included text that was meant as a cry for help to God. The Office of the Dead, which is one of the images depicted here, you can see there's a funeral mass occurring. The Office of the Dead included prayers for the dead to help them to escape purgatory. And then the Suffrages was another part that might be included in a Book of Hours, which included prayers to the Trinity or to saints. And that concludes this presentation of Books of Hours. Thank you.